Thank you for joining my lecture. Today, I would like to talk about North Korean terrorism that sent shockwaves around the world. The Blue House Raid. On January 17, 1968, a unit of 31 North Korean commandos disguised in South Korean military uniforms crossed the demilitarized zone DMZ to assassinate President Park Chung-hee and his cabinet. During the infiltration, they encountered four South Korean civilians and detained them. After verifying their identities through ID cards, the commandos threatened to kill their entire families if they reported it to the police. Before eventually releasing them, however, once freed, the civilian immediately notified the police. On January 21st, after entering Seoul, the commandos changed into Japanese-made suits and raincoats they had brought with them and infiltrated near the Blue House, the official residence of South Korea's president. However, they were intercepted at the checkpoint by South Korean authorities, who were on high alert due to the civilian report. The commandos opened fire with automatic rifles and fled. Over the course of a 2-week manhunt by South Korean military and police, one was captured, 29 were killed, and one committed suicide by blowing himself up. On the South Korean side, the conflict resulted in 68 deaths, including soldiers, police officers, and civilian bystanders. The captured commando was Second Lieutenant Kim Shin-jo, who was 27 years old at the time. He reportedly believed that if President Park Chung-hee, who ruled with a military dictatorship, were assassinated, the South Korean people would inevitably rise up in a workers' revolution. Furthermore, he stunned the South Korean public when he boldly declared into the television cameras, "I came to slit Park Chung-hee's throat." Kim Shin-jo was later taken prisoner, and after undergoing about a year of interrogation, he was released. After that, he became a pastor in Seoul, had 2 children with his wife, and passed away on April 9, 2005. The Moon Se-guwan incident. In May 1973, Moon Se-guwan, a Korean who lived in Japan, aiming for the unification of the Korean peninsula under communism, received orders to assassinate President Park Chung-hee from North Korean intelligence officer aboard the Mangyong-bong, which was anchored in Osaka Bay. On July 18, 1974, he stole 2 pistols from the Takatsu police box in Minami Ward, Osaka City. After forging a visa and passport for South Korea, he entered the country with the pistols concealed in transistor radio case that had been emptied of its components. On August 15, 1974, as President Park Chung-hee began a congratulatory address at the National Theatre in Namsan, Seoul, Moon Se-guwan stood up from the audience, ran down the aisle, fired 2 shots towards the podium. President Park Chung-hee hid behind the podium and escaped harm. But the third shot struck his wife, Yuk Yong-soo, who was seated nearby. She was rushed to the hospital but passed away. Moon Se-guwan was subsequently sentenced to death and executed on December 20, 1974, at the Seoul Detention Center. The Rangoon bombing. On October 9, 1983, North Korean agents Kim Jin-soo, Kang Min-chol, and Kim Chi-ho planted the explosives at the mayor's mausoleum in Rangoon, Burma, now Myanmar, in an attempt to assassinate President Chun Doo-fan, who was scheduled to lay arrest there. Due to a delay in the president's arrival, the agents mistook earlier arriving South Korean government officials for the president. Furthermore, when the military band began playing a fanfare to signal the start of the ceremony, Major Kim Jin-soo detonated the remote-controlled bomb. The mayor's mausoleum was transformed into a scene of bloody chaos, with bodies scattered across the ground. While blood-stained survivors screamed in terror, the bombing claimed the lives of 21 people, including 17 high-ranking South Korean officials and 4 Burmese nationals, and left 47 others injured. Following the investigation and pursuit by the Burmese police, the three North Korean agents were cornered. Captain Kim Chi-fo was shot dead, while Major Kim Jin-soo and Captain Kam Min-chul were arrested. The arrest of the two suspects revealed the full details of the terror plot by North Korean agents. On November 4, 1983, the Burmese government concluded that North Korea was responsible for the attack. In response, Burma not only severed diplomatic ties with North Korea, a fellow socialist ally at the time, but also formally withdrew its recognition of the North Korean nation. Major Kim Jin-soo was sentenced to death and executed in 1985. Captain Kam Min-chul, whose death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment due to his confession. After that, Captain Kam Min-chul died of liver cancer in prison in 2009. The North Korean abduction of South Korean filmmakers. As an unparalleled film fanatic, Kim Jong-il wanted to produce movies that would receive international acclaim. In 1978, Kim Jong-il abducted South Korean actress Chae Eun in Hong Kong, followed by her ex-husband and film director Shin Sang to force them to produce North Korean films. Chae Eun secretly hid a tape recorder in her handbag and managed to record several of her conversations with Kim Jong-il. On March 15, 1986, while traveling in Vienna, Austria, Shin Sang and Chae Eun sought refuge at the U.S. Embassy and applied for political asylum. This daring escape exposed North Korea's abduction program to the world and led to the public release of Kim Jong-il's actual voice, which Chae Eun had secretly recorded. Korean Air Flight 858 bombing on November 29, 1987. A Korean Air flight carrying 11 crew members and 104 passengers from Abu Dhabi to Bangkok exploded in mid-air. The bomb detonated inside the aircraft, causing it to disintegrate and crash into the Andaman Sea. Immediately after the incident, it was discovered that the man and the woman of East Asian descent had boarded the flight in Baghdad and disembarked at Abu Dhabi, the layover point. On the afternoon of November 13th, the two were staying at a hotel in Manama, the capital of Bahrain, carrying Japanese passports. They were identified by the names Hachiya Shinchi and Hachiya Maimi and were purportedly traveling as father and daughter. As the two were attempting to board a connecting flight to Roma at the Bahrain airport, an official from the Japanese embassy arrived with Bahrain police officers and successfully prevented them from departing the country. When authorities attempted to question them at the airport, the man pretended to smoke a cigarette and bit into a cyanide capsule concealed in his mouth, committing suicide. The woman also attempted to take her own life by seizing a cyanide capsule hidden in a cigarette, but a police officer immediately lunged at her and forced her to spit it out, saving her life. It was subsequently confirmed that the passport held by the deceased man was a forgery created by North Korean agents. After being interrogated by the Bahrain police, the woman, identified as Hachiya Maimi, was extradited to South Korea on December 15th, though her true nationality and name remained unknown. During the transfer, she was forced to wear a suicide prevention mouthpiece. Her mouth was covered with heavy adhesive tape, and she was carried by her arms. Even during questioning by the Agency for National Security Planning in Seoul, she initially posed as a Chinese national. However, as the daily interrogations continued, investigators began to point out numerous contradictions in her claiming of being Japanese or Chinese. When investigators took her out to the street of Seoul at night, she witnessed the city's prosperity firsthand. It was then she realized she had been deceived by North Korea, which had told her that South Korea was land over with beggars and prostitutes. Shortly after, she confessed that she was Kim Hyun-hee, a special agent of the North Korean Workers' Party Central Committee's research department, and that the man who had committed suicide was her fellow agent, Kim Sung-il. According to her testimony, she carried a portable radio containing a plastic bomb with a timer and a liquor bottle filled with liquid explosives in her bag. She then placed them in the overhead rack in front section of the aircraft. Near where the two of them were seated. This act of terrorism was carried out in accordance with Kim Jong-un's handwritten directive, which ordered blow up the Korean air jetliner to disrupt South Korea's solo hosting of the Seoul Olympics and to obstruct the participation of other nations. Abduction of Japanese citizens by North Korean agents. From the 1970s through the 1980s, suspicious vessels appeared frequently along the coast of the Sea of Japan, coinciding with a series of incidents where people went missing or narrowly escaped abduction. Although there was strong suspicion of North Korean involvement, both North Korea and the General Association of Korean Residents in Japan vehemently denied any responsibility, instead fiercely criticizing the Japanese government. Driven into a corner by the US President Bush's axis of evil speech and the collapse of its distribution system, a desperate North Korea agreed to talks with Japan. On September 17, 2002, Japanese Prime Minister Koizumi Junichiro made a sudden historic trip to Pyongyang to meet the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong-il. North Korea had consistently denied the abduction for years. However, Kim Jong-il finally admitted to them seized a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, the visit of the Japanese Prime Minister and the potential to secure massive financial aid from Japan. Regarding the verification of the abductees' safety, the North Korean side informed Japan that 5 were alive and 8 had died. The 5 individuals announced as alive were allowed to return to Japan temporarily, but the children were effectively held as hostages in North Korea. However, these 5 survivors did not return to North Korea as originally planned. Instead, they remained in Japan and waited for their children's return, which was eventually realized. On the other hand, regarding the 8 individuals declared dead, North Korea has failed to provide any clear or convincing evidence of their passing. On November 15, 1977, 13-year-old Yokota Megumi was abducted by North Korean agents while on her way home from after-school activities. North Korea initially claimed she had committed suicide in 1993 due to a nervous breakdown. However, after returning, abductees testified that she was still alive after 1993. North Korea revised its claim, stating that she had committed suicide in April 1994. After that, North Korea provided what they claimed were Megumi's remains. However, DNA testing conducted in Japan proved that the remains were not hers. The shelling of Yongbyon Island on November 23, 2010. The South Korean military was conducting live fire exercises near the Yellow Sea. North Korea had issued a warning stating, "If artillery is fired into our territorial waters, we will take immediate physical action." However, the South Korean side ignored this and proceeded with the drill. As a result, North Korea fired approximately 170 shells at Yongbyon Island, with 80 of them landing on the island. The bombardment killed 2 South Korean Marines and 2 civilians, and left 16 Marines and 3 civilians with injuries of varying severity. On February 16, 2012, North Korea's Rodon Sinbun officially acknowledged that Kim Jong-un had commanded this sharing. The assassination of Kim Jong-nam. Kim Jong-nam, the eldest son of North Korea's second-generation director Kim Jong-il, had lived abroad for many years. On February 13, 2017, while standing in front of an automated check-in kiosk at Kuala Lumpur International Airport, he was suddenly approached by two women who smeared the deadly nerve agent VX on his face. He was subsequently pronounced dead after being transported to hospital. Malaysian police arrested a 25-year-old Indonesian woman and a 28-year-old Vietnamese woman as suspects. North Korean agents posing as Japanese TV crew members had the two women perform numerous rehearsals under the guise of a TV prank, while the charges against the Indonesian woman were dropped at the request of her government. The Vietnamese woman was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in prison, but was later released following a sentence remission. While Interpol placed 4 North Korean agents who fled to North Korea on its international wanted list, a high-ranking North Korean official reportedly stated that they were liquidated immediately upon their return under the orders of Kim Jong-un to prevent any information leaks. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel to maintain these education activities. I'm looking forward to seeing you again.